I just think that society sells us on this idea that like your Prince Charming comes and sweeps you off your feet and changes your life, right?
You did again.
You did. But you never, like, after the credits close, you never see what happens with that, like, prince and that princess, and like you never see behind the scenes. Disney doesn't show you after the wedding, right? Yeah. So like I had no idea that after the wedding, like, there'd be trials and tribulations.
Disney doesn't show you after the wedding. It's a bar. Hey family, welcome back. It's LeVar and my beautiful wife Rianne. So we're gonna do things a little differently this episode. So for many that do not know, my wife and I just celebrated our 5-year wedding anniversary. So I actually posted on Instagram the top 10 things I learned in my first 5 years as a husband, and it was very well received. So a lot of people have been asking to kind of hear from us, specifically my wife, to kind of hear her side of the perspective as well. So we thought we'd touch on that this episode.
Yeah, but we're not going to do 10 things each because that would be way too long. But we decided to split it. I'm going to talk about my top 5 things that I learned as a wife these past 5 years, and my husband will do. Yeah. Okay, so I have my list. Did you want to start, or should I start since?
So you already know, you've read my list. So these are my top 5. Yeah. I don't know at all what yours are, so this is going to be live and kind of hearing what my wife thinks. But yeah, I can start. Okay. So my number 1 is she doesn't want you to fix every problem. Sometimes she just wants to vent. This was a major one. It took a lot of time and patience, mainly because I feel like men are wired a lot differently. We never want to come off as like nagging, so we're always very solution oriented. From a little boy, you're kind of taught to like get over it and kind of fix the problem as opposed to just soaking in your emotions, soaking in your feelings. So every time my wife came to me and wanted to talk about something, I would try to get to the solution. So I know that was a big learning curve for myself, and it took some understanding to kind of hear like, I don't want you to fix it. I just want to talk to you.
Yeah, I think it's just more so of like feeling like your partner has empathy for what you're going through, because sometimes if you're trying to explain your feelings and someone just presents like, well, you should do this, it kind of minimizes your pain, or it feels like that's what they're doing. Like they're just like, this isn't even a big deal. Here's a solution. Why didn't you think of this yourself? And it's just like, well, I know how to overcome this as well, but I was just trying to explain to you how I was feeling, just looking for some sympathy and some emotional support. So, yeah. Okay. So, my number 1 thing that I learned that I had to really unlearn from my upbringing was that for us, it is okay to go to bed angry. And that's something like we would kind of be fighting mid-fight about the fact that he didn't want to fight with me. And,
like not now.
Yeah.
Another time.
And I think that is something that just in Christian culture, this idea that like, Paul says in Ephesians, don't let the sun set on your anger. And so we've kind of interpreted that as like, you can't go to bed angry. And it's really interesting to me because Paul was not speaking in that context, in romantic relationships, right? He was talking to the church of Ephesians, which was a lot of, brothers and sisters in Christ. And God is not temporal like we are. And I know this is like preachy, but that's how God made me.
Pass the collection plate.
But my point is that Paul is talking to the church and like friendships in that church, and he's also saying that like be angry but do not sin. Meaning that the bigger point is you can't let anger seep. You can't let anger go unaddressed with your brother or sister in Christ, because then that leads to sin. Temptation creeps in. You go to work and you're like, oh, I'm so mad at my husband, and then your work husband people have those. I don't. But I'm just saying like that happens, and he will maybe bring you a bagel. And you're like, my husband never brings me a bagel. And just like little stuff like that is how you let sin creep in out of your anger. So it's about addressing it with that person, because if you can get in an argument at 7 p.m., the sun sets at 7:30, like the sun set on your anger, like God is not temporal like that. You're not sinning. And so for me, I had to recognize that, he doesn't always, he's not like me where when I have something on my mind, I just want to get it out, and I have already formulated my arguments and I'm just like ready to get over it. He is more, like emotionally recluse, kind of like he takes more time to develop his thoughts, and he wants to be careful with what he says so he doesn't, speak in anger and say something hurtful, with a harsh tongue, which I am like learning to tame my tongue a bit more, right? So anyway, I just think it's something in the Christian culture, and that's the foundation of a relationship, that has kind of been misinterpreted. And that happens a lot with scripture, right? And so you always hear that you can't go to bed angry, and that's kind of, what I was always raised hearing. So I was like badgering him to just like, let's resolve this. And that's not fair to him, because it didn't give him opportunity to think out his thoughts. So instead, when I am angry, I don't sleep in it. I let him know right away, like, hey, this is bothering me.
Right away.
And so it's addressed, right? So in that sense, I'm doing what the Bible says, but I allow him to tell me in that moment, like, okay, I want to address it now. Or if he doesn't want to, I have to respect that. And that took a long time. And it's still something we're working on. But it really goes a long way with how we're able to resolve conflict when he's in a better place to have the conversation. It doesn't lead to like a bigger fight because you're saying things that you don't mean.
Yeah, no, I think that's key. I'm a very calculated when I speak, so I want to make sure that what I say actually means, especially because I know you're going to take it to heart. So I definitely want to make sure like I can process out exactly the way to deliver it, because delivery is key in a relationship.
Yeah. Okay. What's your second big lesson?
There's power in her criticism. She can help you refine your blind spots. So this was kind of self-explanatory, to be honest. My wife definitely likes to vocalize her opinion in every situation possible. And I, again, kind of take it as nagging to a certain extent, where it's just like she's kind of nitpicking at a lot of the little stuff that's just like not a big deal. But after kind of doing more reflection, I realized that there is power, and because she can see things that maybe I already don't see. And there's also, of course, she knows my vulnerabilities. She knows areas where I may be in my comfort zone. She can kind of push me out of my comfort zone. So, I mean, again, it's a partnership at the end of the day. So you want to make sure that you can trust your partner to kind of give that open and honest feedback, and never try to shut them down in that regards.
Yeah. And at the same time, I've learned, again, like the first lesson, timing, right? So like I can see things because I feel like God has equipped me as his partner to be able to see his blind spots and cover him in that way. But I don't always have to vocalize it. Sometimes I can cover him in prayer, and then God can reveal that to him. So I've been learning to do that as well.
Okay, I know that.
Yeah.
So there's so much more that you haven't told me.
Okay. Okay, so again, with like taming the tongue, for me, it's to avoid using absolute language. Generally, when I speak, I'm very hyperbolic. I'm literally starving. I'm always this, that's just how I speak. So for me, I didn't think twice about telling him like, you always, leave water spots on the mirror, or you always don't, do X, Y, and Z. And for a man, it's really important to
acknowledge their past achievements,
and
a track record. So no, don't always do something about been improving.
This is my section. I was trying to say the love language, words of affirmation. So for him, that's really key. So me saying like, you always don't do this, or you always do something negative, was completely failing to acknowledge the times that he did get it right, the times that he did clean the mirror or whatever. And if you don't if you don't use encouraging language, then it's not going to motivate him to like do those things. It's just like, well, she thinks that I always don't do it anyway, so what is the point? So for me, that's something that that's kind of one of those trigger words in an argument where it could just really escalate to the next level. And I was just like, chill, like I didn't literally mean always, but yeah. So I'm trying to be better about that, better to practice.
For sure. So number 3 for me, which was a popular one, being right is a temporary pleasure with an extremely high cost. Again, very self-explanatory. When you're in the heat of the argument, the only thing you care about at that moment is getting your point across and making sure that the other person feels your perspective, regardless of what the situation is. And you have to sometimes realize that it may not be worth kind of getting your point across. I think it's better to understand the situation, calculate both emotions to see who's in a better state to actually receive whatever the right actual matter is. And again, if you do have to prove your point, make sure it's in a very comfortable environment.
Yeah, nothing more to add to that. So my number 3 is to respect his feelings without asking for evidence. When he says something to me like, you're doing this or it's making me feel this way, I'm always quick to say, how? Show me, when did I do that? And I feel like, again, like I mentioned, I'm the person who, when there is we were having a disagreement, I generally come and I'm just like X, Y, and Z is why I'm upset. Here's what you did on Tuesday at 4:55. Like, that's just my personality, where he more so, because he doesn't, every instance that like I've bothered him, he doesn't bring it up on the spot.
Right.
So it might be kind of like a collection of things, or like maybe I did something 3 months ago, then I repeated the behavior 6 weeks from there, and then 2 weeks, and then he finally says something. And so he might come to me and say in an absolute language, perhaps, that like I keep doing something and I don't remember what I did 3 months ago. So I'm like, when did I do that? Oh, I did it one time. And it's just like, I shouldn't like be drilling him for receipts. I should just receive what he says and respect it and believe him. And so that's something I'm trying to be better at, because it's not fair to put him on the spot like that. Because again, that's not his personality. He's not combative like that. He's not coming at me, to defend his case. He's just like, hey, you're making me feel this way. Can you not? And I should just say, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it also plays to our personality. So kind of speaking, we kind of mentioned it earlier, how if something bothers you, you mention it right away.
Yeah.
If something bothers me, I'll brush it off, until I can't brush anymore.
Yeah.
But I kind of expect and assume that you know the other times that I brushed it off, but I
Mhm.
realize that you may not don't. So
Mhm.
it also does fall on me to vocalize that.
Yeah. And
Occasionally.
we've discussed that before, of just kind of like being more consistent when you bring something up. Because again, if you come to someone and it's just like kind of, it's like a paper cut thing, it's a paper cut, and then the final one, you're just like, it was a paper cut, why are you tripping? It's just like, you've cut me 4 different times.
And
So
paper cuts hurt,
yeah. Okay,
Cool.
what are we on, 4?
Number 4, yeah. So this was a funny one, and I thought that you were the only one that did this, to be honest with you, until I heard from every other husband. If you say something, she's going to hold you to it, even if you were just brainstorming.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and this could be something so like minuscule. So say, for example, I wake up in the morning and I'm just like, I think it's a nice day to go to the park this afternoon. And then when the afternoon comes, I'm just like, I don't really feel like going to the park because it's hot. So let's instead go to the movies. But my wife would be like, no, I already have my picnic blanket, I already packed the lunches. And I'm just like, hold on. I didn't confirm anything. I just said it was a nice day for like a park.
Yeah.
Or again, if I wake up in the morning and say I feel like barbecue, and when it comes down to dinner time, my tastes have changed. Wife already has her mouth salivating.
I've already looked at the menu. I've
Yeah.
already picked it out. Like, yeah, we're going to get barbecue.
So, and of course that also can magnify to like more sort of larger term discussions and whatnot. So that was something I had to learn. Like, if I say something, I have to be very careful before putting it out there, because she really takes it to heart and just really looks for that kind of consistency and conviction for myself.
Yeah. I think like, yeah, I don't, I know you said you're surprised that like I was the only one who felt this way, but I think women in general look to a man to, follow through with his word. So it's kind of like, yeah, if you say something, like, we want to see that come to pass, even in the little things. So
yeah, but there also has to be a place where we can have like an open discussion.
Well, you preface it by saying like, let's brainstorm this, and you've done that. Like, let's have a conversation, let's discuss this, like, let's figure out what we want to do. But when you say it, like definitively, then I'm just like, all right, like I like that. Women like decisiveness.
I hear
you. Yeah. Okay. Oh, this is a pretty good one. This was one that surprised me. And I know it's going to sound bad, but basically, he wants to be made a priority. So,
such an ask.
No, but so I work a pretty hectic schedule. My work hours are just like, kind of crazy. So when it comes to the weekends, I was very much like self-care, like, let me get my nails done, my hair done. And of course, this was like pre-quarantine.
So clear, my wife probably works on average from like 9 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Yeah.
So she can't do like chores throughout the week.
Yeah.
Monday through Friday.
Yeah. So the weekends were like my thing, and it's just like, oh, let me treat myself. I need to get my nails done. I need to do, dry cleaning, like whatever I have to do, like pick up an errand. Even though I try and, deliver a lot, but you get it. And I would be out just like living my best life, and I'd get home and he would kind of be sour, and I'm just like, what's wrong with you? Like, what'd you do today? And he's just like, feeling like, you literally left me all day. You didn't check in. You didn't see if I've eaten lunch. Like, you didn't like sit down and have breakfast with me. He's just like, I don't see you during the week either. So on the weekends, it'd be nice to like have some time with my wife and not just relegated to like 7 to 9 p.m. dinner or date night or whatever. Because in my mind, I was just like, yeah, I'm getting cute, I'm getting relaxed so that I can, have the date night with my husband. But that wasn't enough. And so he wanted me to like make him my priority and like schedule him in. And it's just nothing that for some reason I had considered. I was just like, I don't know, I just wasn't thinking that way.
And I
So
think that I guess that also kind of operated in like when we were dating. So obviously you had a
mhm,
very strict schedule when you were in track and at
mhm,
school, whether it be law school or undergrad.
mhm.
And you always had the priority, like, okay, well, this we have our date night on the book, so I'll make sure I have
Yeah.
time for him. And that
Mhm,
worked when we were dating, but it's a little
mhm.
different when you're living with someone and obviously you're my wife and
Yeah.
husband. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, number
So
5.
number 5, even as a black man, I have privileges that she does not as a black woman, and I have to be sensitive to that.
Mhm.
So it's a deep one. It's a deep one. And of course, if you have questions in terms of what those privileges are, being a man is a privilege, and I
Mhm,
a lot of times didn't. I mean, I knew it was a privilege, especially in the workplace, because I mean, I work in recruiting, so I know hiring women in
mhm,
technical capacity is a very important thing. But even something small. So we lived in East Oakland, and I would go out and walk the dog for let's say 5 to 10 minutes and not lock the door when I left the house because I mean, I'm just not afraid. I mean, I don't walk in fear. I don't worry about my life. So I feel like I can protect myself. But my wife would be like, "Why didn't you lock the door? Oh my gosh, we live in East Oakland. Like, you should be much more careful." And I'm just like, "But I'm literally 5 to 10 minutes away." But I understand that she's in a much more vulnerable state
yeah.
because she just can't protect herself physically, or doesn't have that same confidence, or just walk around with that same kind of privilege to a certain extent of knowing, like, if a man was to walk in, that could be a serious ordeal.
Yeah.
And again, it may sound like doesn't sound like rocket science to some people, but I didn't really realize that to a certain extent because again, I felt like I was close, so I didn't think it was that big a deal. Um, yeah.
Yeah, no, we had a lot of just like, "What are you doing leaving this door open?" Like, a lot of hard conversations about that because he would just walk around leaving doors unlocked. I'm just like, regardless of where we even lived, I would feel the same, but, like, particularly because we lived in Oakland, it's just like, "Okay." Um,
And also
so
being sensitive to like the microaggressions that you go through at work.
yeah.
Obviously, I go through them as well, being a black man in an environment where I'm a minority. But knowing that my wife faces that times two. So
Mhm,
as they always say, when I'm at work as a black man, I feel like I'm under a microscope. So if I do something, I'm representing the entire black community,
mhm,
whereas my wife, as a black woman, not only represents the entire black community, but also all the women, which
mhm.
are even a smaller minority within the workforce. So
Yeah.
being sensitive, knowing that she has a much harder uphill battle than myself. Obviously, trying to support her in any way possible for myself to put her in the best position to feel like she's supported and has a very safe, comfortable environment at home because I know the world is not very supportive in that regard.
Mhm, yeah. No, I think you've come a long way with that for
Yeah.
sure, yeah. Okay, and my number 5 is kind of like a very broad one, but basically that marriage is about holiness and not about happiness. So for me, I know like in the you're dating, you're like that honeymoon stage of dating and the honeymoon stage of marriage, and I feel like we had a really long honeymoon stage of dating. We were kind of like, I mean, yes, we fought, but like they would have to be like really big fights, but otherwise we were very just like in the clouds, and we had all this time together and we didn't have stressors, and we weren't working full-time jobs. We met in college, right? So it was just very like la la and light, and you're just always happy to see each other. When we got married, obviously we're like, okay, reality check. We have bills. We have like hard, hard time commitments with like your careers and just like needing time for like personal self care. And any little thing where I felt like I wasn't overjoyed and happy, I was like seeking that in my husband inappropriately. I was like, oh my gosh, we need counseling. Like, you don't come home and smile at me. We're not like having like 5-hour conversations. Like, this kind of feels like a roommate situation sometimes, because sometimes you're kind of just like living and passing it in certain seasons. But I had to realize that like, marriage is like a bunch of seasons. Like every season is going to be different. Some of them are going to be, more joyful. Some things are going to be like more strenuous. Yeah. So every moment that I wasn't just like, over the moon or like I didn't have butterflies in my stomach, I just thought we were like doomed and like needed counseling instead of recognizing that we were just in a particular season and that not only was I, of course, responsible for your emotions, but you also shoulder some of the emotions of your partner and what they're going through in their personal life. So like our first year of marriage, his grandfather, who he was very close with, and I was too, as a result, he passed away. And like that was really difficult time. I had never seen him have to deal with death or just be that sad, and to try and like provide that comfort to him. And so it's just like a matter of realizing that like not every moment is going to be happy, but the foundation of our marriage at least is Jesus Christ. And so I have to remember that, that joy that I'm seeking and that fullness comes from Christ and not from my husband. And I can't put all of that emotional burden on him to be my everything. It's not fair to him. It's not fair to the relationship that I have with God. And yeah, it just made me realize that like, okay, when we're going through certain things that aren't ideal, what can I learn from this? And it shouldn't be about like, to my husband, you're not doing X, Y, and Z to make me happy, but more so like, okay, God, like, what are you trying to show me in this season? What can I do to change? How can I mirror like whatever lesson you're trying to show me that will, reflect on my husband as well? Show me what areas to cover him in prayer. And so I try to more internalize it now versus looking outwardly and just thinking like, this is on you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because it's marriage is such a form to be closer to God and to learn how to model more of his character, because you have a direct reflection and a choice every day to love someone, and to like make the decision to put them first and just kind of like display those characteristics of like love, patience, kindness, holiness, right? So yeah, I just I just think it's been a really big wake up call for me that I shouldn't be seeking happiness from this, even though of course that comes with the territory. There are moments of like pure bliss, right? But I should be seeking like holiness and like looking at the lessons I can learn from this marriage and the difficult times and the good times and all of that.
I wonder if it's a man, because I never really struggled with that. Like when things were kind of stale, I mean, I knew we can always just spruce it up. It's just a matter of just life. I mean, even at a job, like you're not gonna always be head over heels for your job or anything for that matter. Things are just gonna get drier. You get accustomed to that. So I was never particularly worried about that. And I wonder if that has anything to do with like men and women.
Well, I just think that society sells us on this idea that like your Prince Charming comes and sweeps you off your feet and changes your life, right? You did. But you never like after the credits close, you never see what happens with that like prince and that princess and like what their day-to-day life is. You just see the like romantic honeymoon phases and they go off and frolic. And so you never see behind the scenes. Disney doesn't show you after the wedding, right? So like I had no idea that after the wedding like there'd be trials and tribulations.
Disney doesn't show you after the wedding. It's a bar.
So for me anyway, and I think for a lot of women, we kind of just freak out and then we're just like, what am I doing wrong? And then you're just like, I'm not doing anything wrong. What are you doing wrong? It's you. So yeah, I had to stop doing that because that was really unhealthy. Okay, so that was 5. And as just like a bonus, I would just say to other Christian couples out there, don't get mad at your partner for not doing things that like God told you to do. That was another thing I would be unnecessarily frustrated with him about.
Explain.
So in my prayer time, God would tell me to like go read that devotional or serve your husband this way, or just give me instruction, right? And then I would come to him and say, hey, like I'm gonna read this devotional. Do you want to read it with me too? And he's just like, no. And I'm just like getting frustrated. I'm just like, we don't pray together. We don't. And it's just like, you don't, just because you're not praying together like at the same time, it doesn't mean that you're not having fulfilled prayer life. Like he likes to pray by himself. I pray, by myself. I have my morning devotional time. And when, we need the support from each other, of course we pray over each other and we'll pray together, but it's not like, I thought it had to be an everyday thing. Like in the morning we wake up and we're going to pray together and we're going to do our devotionals together and it's going to be so cute and we're just going to like serve the Father together. And that's just not how it works for us. Like I get up 5:30, 6 o'clock. He gets up, 9:45 for a 10 o'clock meeting. Like we're just very different people. I work out, 6:30 in the morning. He works out, 6:30 p.m. Or he would be in the gym really late. So we're just very different like that. And I was just trying to like force him to do what God was telling me to do. And it's just like, no, God didn't put that on his heart. He put it on your heart. And however he's going to change you could, reflect on your husband later. But like, don't have the same expectation, because again, God was speaking to you. So that was something that I was like getting out of hand with. But yeah, anyway, we hope that you enjoyed this video and just getting to know us a little bit more. And hopefully some of these messages, or lessons rather, resonate with you. And if you have any more that you'd like to share in the comments below, please do, because we're always looking to learn. Everyone else, I'm sure, is looking to learn to improve their marriage if they're
For sure.
happy and wanted to sustain it.
And if you want to hear anything else specifically from us in
Mm-hmm.
terms of our relationship, we try to be as vulnerable as possible, but while
Yeah.
still maintaining our own little boundaries. So
Yeah.
please let us know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you.
All right, fam. Until next time.